There's a lot of discussion in the industry about it, that many predicted that everything is like reaching a certain plateau and we are more and more seeing incremental improvements, which maybe has been the thing actually in the last couple of months. But on the other hand, I think we have had just this week, Gemini 3 is maybe too early to say. But so far, what we have been testing, it's actually definitely not sharp. But actually what came the other day, Nano Banana 2, that one for us, it's actually solved some problem.
Hi, my name is Dimitri Panici, and I'm a content creator, agency owner, and AI enthusiast. You're listening to the AI Agents Podcast, brought to you by Jotform, and featuring our very own CEO and founder, Ida Tank. This is the show where artificial intelligence meets innovation, productivity, and the tools shaping the future of work. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the AI Agents Podcast. In this episode, we have Peter Grimvall, the founder and co-founder, I should say, of Econa. How are you doing today, Peter?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Just to kind of kick things off, would love to know a little bit more about how you first got into AI and what led you to founding Econa.
Yeah, actually, how I got into AI was almost... it's almost a decade ago, yeah. And it was just a coincidence. I moved countries many times with work and so on, worked long in Asia. And then I came back to Europe. And then after some moves to Germany, Sweden, I ended up in Switzerland. So the first thing you have to do is you have to find a place to live. And then if your work is far out, you need to have a car. So I actually bought a Tesla in 2016 with autopilot. And that actually struck me. And as I'm working in supply chain, I immediately thought it's how can this type of technology actually be applied in supply chain? So I actually started to study a bit just beside of work at MIT on this topic. And then I think halfway into the studies, I realized that, we have many application areas at my work. And as I was already, leading that type of topic at IKEA at that time, I actually pitched to IKEA, let's start the first AI team and focus on supply chain. And they gave me actually 2 headcounts, so I could hire 2 people. And then we actually started to build some prediction models to predict future sales. This was the first task that we went on. But then I also realized that actually the same year when I had my parents over for Christmas, and when you're a teenager, you're not so interested of what your parents are doing. But then I actually found out that my father was teaching in machine learning in the 80s, but before the computing power. Yeah, exactly. So I found it out
in the 80s. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think so, 80s or 90s. Now I don't recall. No, so that's actually the journey. And then we actually just started those use cases, and I had the opportunity that I could actually implement these use cases in my own organization. So I could both develop it and also benefit it from myself. So I didn't, I didn't have to go and look for stakeholders or customers or anything like this. So that's how I came into it. And then to the second part of your question, how to came into Econa was that not sure if it was a midlife crisis, but after working 20 years in corporate, I have a lot of energy, and it would be interesting to try something on your own. And what I actually discovered when I ventured into to start something on my own was actually the combination between actually knowing something plus knowing something a bit about AI is actually a very nice combination. So I worked 20 years in supply chain, and everything from procurement to manufacturing and logistics, and also design and planning, etc. And then also being early on to IKEA. So that meant that when we are actually talking to our clients and working our projects, we can actually connect very quickly. And also I think we can also avoid many of the simple mistakes when you actually don't fully understand the context of why we are building something. Yeah. So that's when I got the call then from my co-founder that has actually more or less identical background, but from Pharma instead. We said that, okay, Pharma, supply chain. And then I have also worked a bit in finance the last year. So we said, okay, pharma, supply chain, and finance. That makes a good mix, and which is also a bit like the core industries here in Switzerland, where we are based also.
Okay, very cool, nice. I think that gives us a good kind of like starting point with your whole story. So, what was kind of the turning point that made you realize there was a market need for what you were doing?
I think it was actually when we started to meet clients, and when you have this connection, and when clients are actually ready to shake hand, almost like on the first or at most like the second meeting. So let's go, more or less when people are ready to shake hand without knowing all the details. So we have established some type of trust. And then we thought, okay, this is actually a very nice niche to work in. And it's also very fun because it's sort of, I enjoyed working in supply chain. So I sort of, I stay working in supply chain, but I also work in AI.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, totally. I agree. I think that's definitely yeah, I think it's interesting kind of where this intersection of everything plays out, because when it comes to your journey, just to kind of get more in deep after the beginning of it, AI is obviously a great time saver. It's a great expander of capacity, right? According to some of the research we did, you guys managed to have really solid revenue and growth only with like a 15-person team. What does it kind of look like to be a company that's AI first, obviously an AI product yourself, and kind of manage to run such a lean, tight ship with what you're doing with AI, and what's that experience been like?
Yeah, I think first of all is we have been super lucky with the timing, because as you say, to be AI first has more or less only been possible very, very recently. So that means that everyone that started like 10 years ago, they sit with a lot of legacy, and probably a lot of like legacy competence and resources in the organization. Yeah, we were actually able to start very recent, and then we can actually be AI first and actually having the approach on building products with AI, but also developed with the help of AI. So now I think it's actually more or less pure luck that we got the right timing, because today you can do so much. Yeah.
A man makes his own luck, sir. I'm just kidding.
No, but I think it's like the huge difference is, I think if I just go back like maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, then maybe you could focus only on AI. You will do the AI part, but you will be super dependent of having like another agency or another team doing the UI and the front end and so on. Now I sort of do the front end, and it goes quite quick, yeah. And as we have the industry experience, is that to create the front end when you sit with experience without having all this translation to like a UI expert, software engineer, etc., you can move very fast. So I think, the first like real product we built at IKEA, to do like a demand sensing system and roll that out globally to 400 stores.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that took like 2 years or something. Yeah. Now we're talking maybe 2-3 months to build something similar. It's crazy. And also with much fewer people also.
No, that's totally fair. And I think it's interesting from my perspective, because like you do have like a 15-person team, right? Ish. Is it?
Yeah, now we're about 20 people, but
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha. Okay. What do you think about like the ability for what you're doing to be kind of, I guess I don't want to say enhanced via having like a smaller team? Because for me, it seems like the more lean you are and the more agile you are, especially in this world of AI, you can really build the foundation with these AI tools a lot better as a company. And kind of following up on that, I would love to hear more about like how that kind of fits into some of the philosophy that you have for your practical application into companies' workflows themselves too.
Yeah. No, but I think if you go back a decade or even just 5 years, I think, you will win a lot of clients saying, hey, we are like 10,000 people or we are 20,000 people. We are very capable of doing things. now I almost think that it's actually not helping these companies to be 10,000
big.
or 20
Yep.
TCV. Yeah, they're simply too big, too slow. So I think actually speed is actually a more strategic asset than size nowadays. Yeah. Um, so I think that is actually what we can say, that we can work fast and we can be close to the development, both from a subject matter expertise, but also from like an AI expertise. And then, we can have quick and interesting developments.
No, totally. I think that's very fair. Because, like, practically speaking, when you get to the size of a 20,000, 30,000 person company, I mean, I've been at decently sized companies of a couple hundred, 400, 500 people. Even at that stage, there's this like funny level of red tape that occurs. And you're like, I just don't know why. Right. But the bigger you get, the worse it gets. The more approvals you have to go through, the more layers you have to go through, where it's like, if someone just implemented this without the quote risk, I think it would just go quicker and better.
Yeah. I think a good example is up in the Nordics, where I come from. It's actually this is Lovable. I don't know how many they are, but I think they're just like 40 people,
No shoot. I love Lovable. Big fan.
and they are now a super big company, at least the revenue, but not in terms of size and employees. Yeah. So
I think they're on track for something in the realm of like 200 million ARR.
yeah, I think I read something.
It was like came
Actually,
out 2 days ago. Yeah.
I had the opportunity. I think it was more or less 1 year ago. I think it was one of the co-founders actually demoed the product for me, but then it was like super immature 1 year ago. So, but it was really cool to, just from that stage to go to this big type of spread around the world.
No, absolutely. I totally agree.
Mm.
That's really cool. That, by the way, that that he was able to chat with you about that and show you that. So kudos, very cool. What I would say, just kind of taking a look at it, is you are kind of in an interesting position. I actually have a question for you about what you guys do, just to dive into a little bit more. What would you say Econa solves for your customers mainly, and what are those types of industries? I know there was a little bit of pharma reference and other regulated industries that were mentioned on your website.
Yeah, but that is one thing that is important that you pick, is like regulated industry actually tend to be a bit also of our speciality, because it's not only to develop the solution, it's to develop also the overall like governance. So like, for example, in pharma, you deal with a lot of patients' data, and that you need to have a very rigorous governance and security around. Finance is more or less the same. It's not about the weight and the diseases of a person. It's the credit card details of a person, and that you have to take equally good care of. Yeah. So I think that is a niche where we're working on. But you can also divide in like in the technology. I would say still maybe 1/3 of our work is more of this, what I would refer to this traditional machine learning, where we build like forecasting models. We are predicting different events. We have also been active in account frauds and so on, which is also traditional machine learning to the majority, even though we are moving in a bit to hybrid in both of them. So, for example, what I mean with hybrid is like maybe we use GenAI to qualify some signals that can be used in features for machine learning models, for example. So, for example, if you want to digest a lot of like social media signals, you can leverage GenAI to actually digest that into something that you can use as a feature in the like a forecasting model. But then the rest 2/3, it's purely Gen AI, and of course a lot of agentic solutions.
Yeah.
But maybe you want some examples also then what we do, or
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that would be a great follow up.
yeah.
Would be, what are some
So if we
examples?
do a few, so I think if we take supply chain to start with, we mentioned like the forecasting and so on, and then if we move into more the agentic AI, it's a lot of workflow automation. And that could be anything from like how you manage orders, how you manage invoices, etc. So typically where you already have a group of like 5, 10, or 20 people doing a little bit the same thing. So we have like a defined process, and we are actually more or less automating this type of process. And it's also that when you have those larger groups of people, I think it's also easier for our clients to harvest the savings also. So when they are thinking about when people are leaving, they can actually think, okay, do I need to replace, or can we manage and scale better with AI solutions? So that is one thing.
Yeah.
And in pharma, it's a lot around. There's a lot of work around compliance, and their AI is actually very, very good. It's also a bit of a workflow. Compliance is typically you have like medical compliance, regulatory compliance, maybe legal compliance. So, for example, what are you allowed to say about this product? How are you? So you make some typical like medical claims that you either use in your marketing, you use them in your packaging, etc. So that is something that all like pharma companies, medical device companies, and also a bit more on like consumer health companies are dealing with on a daily basis. Yeah. So typically like a very long, troublesome process where we can help with automation, but also like pre-qualify. So that means like avoid submitting material that will not pass. Yeah. So that is the worst thing. Yeah. You create something, but it will not pass, but it will, it will go through some of the reviews, and then it will get stuck on the last review. So with AI, we can help them to be like pre-qualified to a very high probability. So that means that this flow, instead of taking like several weeks or several months, can now run in a couple of days through the organization. So that's a very interesting use case. Then another case that my co-founder has worked a lot in is also how to leverage like clinical studies. So you have done studies in the past, but now you actually want to look at the like selection. So you have registered, of course, a lot of data in this study, but now you want simply actually more or less ask another question. So in the past, it was, there was someone that had a question, but could not code. So this person had to go to like a data scientist, and then this data scientist, retrieve the data, clean the data, organize it, and so on, and then deliver the insight back. Yeah. And that is something that we are actually building a lot independent of industry, is more or less this text-to-SQL. So with natural language, you can ask questions to your data and not only get the answers back, but also maybe with visualization, maybe also some proof points also, so you actually believe in the answer. I think that is also always a challenge. For example, if you use just ChatGPT, you just get an answer, but no reference.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's interesting, kind of where this sits, because I would imagine, and call me, maybe correct me on this a little bit, but most companies that are in regulated industries are, on the surface, you'd think a little bit more apprehensive towards or cautious about implementing AI solutions right now because of security reasons. Is that a fair assessment?
I think we can say we are experiencing like two sides of this. Pharma, they are very rigorous about the data security, but they're also very progressive.
Like they want to
So
do it, but they got to
they
make
really
sure
want to
it's.
do it, and they are doing it. When we work in finance,
Hmm.
many of them are still operating like purely on-prem, which is interesting today, yeah, with the open source model and the open AI latest models, for example. So last week we were at a meeting with one of the big banks around here, one of the largest in Europe, and we shut off the Wi-Fi and we demoed just what we had on the MacBook, what you can actually do today. Yeah. So this is quite amazing development. So that I'm actually very interested to follow. Maybe in the future we will not ship a product. Maybe I'll ship my MacBook pre-installed with the software, yeah. And then you can work offline if you want the ultimate security. Yeah. But I think in the end, also financial institutions, they are moving into the cloud. Yeah. But then you can imagine it's in Europe, it's also important that it should be like a European cloud, the data should stay in Europe and not go anywhere else, etc. So there are many parameters to think about.
Yeah, totally. There are a lot of parameters to think about with this, and my dad works in finance in the States, and I think they're in a very funny position, especially when it comes to security. Like anything, I feel like that comes up in finance is regulated at this point. Anything and everything is very regulated. So I would say, another question that is important to a lot of people is you work across building multi-agent workflows, right? I think now we've kind of learned about orchestration, agents that orchestrate. There's a lot of infrastructure and strategy questions. How do you kind of decide which part of that journey each client needs, whether they just need some individual agents? How do you determine how to build multi-agent workflows? What's your approach for that?
Yeah, actually, it starts a lot with actually, if you want to really zoom out, I would say it's actually no difference with AI compared to when you actually maybe 10 or 20 years ago wanted to digitalize your process in some way. Yeah? It's like you really have to understand the process. You have to make sure that actually the process is also followed to a high degree. And then you also then have to break down the process, yeah. Because as you know, you are also working on this on a daily basis. If you write this long prompt that should cover many steps on the process, your likelihood to be correct is not so high. But if you break down the process and tell the agent to focus only on this small part, you have a much higher likelihood to succeed. Yeah. So that is also, of course, a big work. And then you talked about orchestration and so on. So there is always a question if the clients already have some infrastructure in place. I would say when it comes to maybe agentic AI, most of our clients don't have anything in place. So then we typically build also the observability, so we can observe the performance over time of these agents. And then it's also the traceability is also very important in, for example, in finance, that you can actually trace back every single prompt that those agents has done. Because if you are in a compliance case, you need to be able to prove actually, what actually happened, what did this agent conclude and ship to the other agent, etc. So you can actually trace it back. And actually, we use it also for problem solving and bug fixing also. Yeah. So it's not only for compliance. Actually, we use it a lot for our own development also.
Yeah, because then you can kind of see where things can be not only just like you're saying. It's not only always about compliance. Now, compliance is definitely important, but it's definitely important to kind of note what improvements you can make and where it went off the rails and why it went off the rails. So a minor question I do have for you, because working in this realm, I think there's maybe some interesting thoughts and misconceptions that one could have about models and how they impact things. I'm not saying that models mean nothing. Obviously, they mean a lot. But what I'm kind of asking recently, a lot of people like you, is at what level have you noticed the biggest changes in model capability impact things practically? And then kind of where has maybe there been a bit of diminishing return? Because I think 4.5 Sonnet was amazing. I think Gemini 3 was amazing. It just came out. Yeah. But 03, was such a big step in reasoning. And I think reasoning models were big. But kind of in the last couple of months, I've sort of had this feeling where we're seeing marginal improvement in a lot of things. We're maybe not seeing the same massive kind of leaps we were seeing before. From a practical standpoint, maybe coding agents are going to continue to kind of blow our minds. But where is this kind of improvement in models helped you guys out, and how have you kind of felt that they've helped you out a lot, and where maybe have they kind of only helped you out in sort of a marginal sense? Because that's the things I'm asking some founders, and I've gotten a lot of interesting different answers recently.
Yeah. No, but it is a very interesting topic, yeah, because it's a lot of discussion in the industry about it, that many predicted that everything is reaching a certain plateau, and we are more and more seeing incremental improvements, which maybe has been the thing actually in the last couple of months. But on the other hand, I think we have had just this week a bit of, I think Gemini 3 is maybe too early to say, but so far what we have been testing, it's actually definitely a notch up. But actually what came the other day, Nano Banana 2, that I would say, that one for us, it's actually solved some problem. It was like
what?
So coming back to when we are generating like marketing materials. So I think Nano Banana was really good in generating like draft material with the visualization and everything, but was not so good in accuracy on the text. So they will put the text, but a lot of like obvious spelling mistakes, yeah. Nano Banana 2, it seems like, okay, we have just, tested it for like 24 hours, but it seems like a majority of these things are actually gone. So now because the marketing material is typically, you maybe have some background or like a person, you have some illustrations of the things that you want to promote or show how good things are. And then you typically have text also, yeah. And if you want to build tools that are generating this for the creators and so on, or marketing campaigns, then the combination of all these three are important. And I would say Nano Banana was good at two of them, but now Nano Banana 2 actually does all three of them. So
Nano banana, nano banana, nano banana. Say that fast.
yeah, exactly.
10 times. It's actually ridiculous. No, but I had noticed that it was good in Nano Banana 1. I haven't checked out 2 recently, so I do appreciate you calling that out, and I don't know how the heck I missed that, but and I am excited to kind of test it out after this episode ends.
Yeah, but do that, because it's also like, it can also, I haven't tried it much, but actually the examples I got from the team today, because they put like a lot of like screenshots in our common chat today, and it actually can understand very much the context very well. So I think one of the team actually just linked their like LinkedIn profile, and then Nana Banana did like a super nice illustration of this person's career, step by step, what they have done and so on. Yeah, with illustration, the year, the text, everything. Super cool.
It's funny, and it's available, I think, right now in like API, if I'm not wrong. Right? It's not really like. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay, so that's a good note for me. Thank you for that. And everyone make sure to go check that out because it's pretty dope. Speaking of kind of the improvements that we're seeing in AI, right, and the capabilities that it has, what are some of the really cool things that you think will come out of this from a job standpoint? Because I think a lot of people are definitely concerned or really excited about what it means for jobs. And I kind of want to get an opinion of yours to, understand where you stand on the whole, is it going to create jobs? Is it going to remove jobs? Is it going to make jobs just different? Where do you stand on this whole thing?
Yeah, hopefully it does both, yeah. Otherwise it will be boring. But I have actually faced this question the last 10 years. And most likely people that worked before me at the companies I worked for, that worked with the digitalization and so on, they probably faced the same question for another decade earlier than that, yeah. And what did I learn? I think if I look back, it's like, can you mention a profession that existed, 50, 60 years ago and doesn't exist today? It's not that many, yeah.
Yeah,
There
but
are a
not
few.
many. Yeah.
There are not many, yeah. But I think there is one that is totally gone, and that is like the elevator operator. That is very, very seldom you see today. So that has been replaced by buttons with a number on, and people can push themselves. But otherwise, it's like, you're replacing 10%, you're replacing 50%, 80%, 90% of a job. So of course, if you have a big mass of people doing the same thing, you will find some improvements there. But otherwise, it's still very difficult to fully replace a job, yeah. Even autonomous driving today is based a lot on having people in the back office. Of course, yeah, one person can deal with, several vehicles at the same time, but, it's not that one person totally disappears. And then you should also add in the people that it takes to develop this and maintain this, etc. So I think, yeah, I don't know if I want to give a number, but maybe it's plus minus zero.
Plus minus zero. That's funny. Fair. I think the elevator operator is a good example I might use moving forward, because it's like, it kind of illustrates the lack of, like, who cares, right? Like, it's like, okay, there's no elevator operators. Who cares at this point, right? Like, it was such a very specific need that no longer, obviously, is needed, right? It's so abundantly clear that it is. I've been trying to find a way to phrase it. Maybe you can help me. There's a difference between value additive jobs, and then there's a difference between, I don't want to call it keeping up with the Joneses, because that's not the right phrase, but basically like jobs that are functionally able to do a task that keeps the thing going, but it doesn't require any actual like mental or physical prowess, right? Like, I don't know what the word is, like maybe just cog jobs. Like people always talk about, it's like, oh, I don't want to be a cog in the machine, in like the modern workplace. But then when maybe those types of jobs would be removed by AI, they often are like afraid of it. And I find it a very funny cognitive dissonance that exists there.
Yeah. Or maybe those that are like more cog in the wheel, I would say they are more likely to be replaced by robots without AI. Yeah? Because if you're doing exactly the same thing over and over again, you can have a robot. And I think if you go to any modern manufacturing plant today, there are
that happened already.
Hundreds of robots. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
that has already happened, and I think it's like it has not been like a financial crisis because we have introduced robots in our manufacturing yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. People don't really talk about that. Yeah, I think people don't really talk about the fact that there was an entire move to elevator operator. There was, well, that's just a smaller bunch of people, but the main people being manufacturing work, I think, was decreased by these robots you're mentioning. And to be fair, obviously it did mean something, but practically, I do think people adjusted, companies adjusted. We've continued to see economic growth and people taking advantage of it. So yeah, it's a good and interesting point. So,
but you can also take another angle saying that, but what will happen with companies that does not adopt AI? Yeah? There is no guarantee for survival.
Well, that's on them. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it is kind of on them to a certain extent, because I think practically, we have a lot of opportunity here to continue to, do what we're doing, and it really positively impact people across the board. And sometimes it's good to force people to get into like a higher level of, knowledge work. And let's say, for example, that's not their shtick. I do think there might be some level of like personability that comes back to work in an ironic way when we remove all of the as heady knowledge work.
Yeah, I think so. Like learning a craft. It's like, I don't know what I should recommend my kids to do, but it's like learning a craft. That might be a very valuable skill in the future.
No, I totally agree, right? Like physical crafts, I think, could come back, because it'll be good knowledge work might be so commoditized. Like basic knowledge work. I think still like premium, like strategy stuff will probably be like human still, because people can come up with stuff in their head that I just don't think pattern recognition could ever get to.
What's a guy, Jeffrey Hinton, didn't he, when he won the Nobel Prize last year, in an interview, he was asked, and then he recommended you should become a plumber, because that is very, very difficult to replace with AI, because you will work in very like uncomfortable positions, and you will work with your hands, and every house that needs to replace their water pipes and sewage pipes, it all looks different in every single house. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Like there's some definite difficulty that's in a lot of these jobs that people don't appreciate. And like probably one of the most lucrative things you can do right now would be taking a company that's more brick and mortar and or more blue collar. This is apparently something people that are like in their 30s with some capital are doing. They're like buying brick and mortar jobs or brick and mortar companies or blue collar companies like plumbing companies. And they're automating a lot of the work that's more knowledge work. They're optimizing routes. And from there, all that together is giving them like a much more like high profit margin blue collar business, and they're making great money with it, right? So there's a lot of opportunity in that sense that I think people are maybe unaware of. And obviously buying the company is like not on the table for a lot of people, but you could build a company and subcontract a bunch of different plumbers and optimize it better than like a older owned company would be, right? Or yeah, so that's something definitely I think that could change in the future. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about AI in business right now?
it's a good, but if we take really the business perspective, I think the most misunderstood thing is when I hear people, I use ChatGPT at work, because then I don't feel that they have fully discovered maybe the full potential
I think that if
of
they
the
just
work. Yeah.
respond with that, I don't think they'd use AI much.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's maybe true. It's a maybe quick answer, but I think it's like to use very generic tools in your work. I don't think that will make you the market leader, so to say. I think you should more think that with AI, you can actually build something like it that is super relevant for your business today. Yeah. And that is
Well,
the unique
I
thing.
totally agree. I
Or,
totally agree with that. And I think my favorite thing to ask people is what's their favorite AI model? And if somebody can't answer the question, that means they don't know jack about AI, right? It's a very easy vetter. Like, I'm not saying they'll know everything if they tell you Claude or if they tell you, you know, Gemini 3.0 was a great release today, right? But point is, I ask that question because it tells me that they know nothing or something.
Yep.
Yeah. Beyond the you know, basic hype of what's going on, right? You have your Geminis, you have your Nana Banana, you have so many different tools out there. What do you think is the most valuable thing practically on a daily basis that companies can implement with AI right now?
yeah, I think most companies have it, but I think just, yeah, to have a very good search. I think that is something. Like I think in bigger corporations, you tend to have like a lot of documents. So to have a really good search, I think it's like, but connected, of course, like with an agent or like an LLM. So like a RAG solution of any kind. So I think that is
That's
something
actually a
that
pretty good
is,
answer. That's a pretty good answer. I didn't consider that. So you think it's more,
if you have nothing, if you have nothing, yeah, then I would at least start something, because I think it's in a, how to say, it collects points in a certain dimension. First of all, it's a very simple thing to put in place, so the investment is extremely low. A couple of days work and you will have it up and running. It's also a bit like democratizing, because I think today you actually, if you're running a company, you want a bit about the awareness, because probably the good ideas will come from your organization. Because there are a lot of shitty tasks that are being done, very repetitive and so on. Yeah, might not be so easy for the C-suite to know all this. Yeah, but actually to enable the entire organization to get some knowledge on what is the art of the possible, then you will actually get all the ideas to improve and so on. Yeah. I think that will be an easy starting point. And you can also imagine, how long time people spend on, where do I find this document? What did we agree 1 year ago? What did we say at this meeting or something like this? Yeah. So that I think is an easy thing. But otherwise, what we typically do is we ask, what is the thing that you like the least about your job? That can also be a very good starting point on finding opportunities.
That's a very good starting point, in my opinion. I think that's a very good point. Is just like there is so much that people dislike that they can get rid of. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple days ago who was like, "I heard you're into AI and stuff," and like asked me questions about what can be done. And it was so funny. They were just focused on this very minute in setting up a new client, like just being able to like have a templated Google Drive that has a bunch of PDFs. I'm like, bro, this is possible in like 2017, right? Like this is not like AI. I'm like, Integromat and Zapier has been around for a while, sort of type conversation. But then when I explained to her that you could actually like create agents that are able to analyze floor plans and like make assessments of how much to charge for the drywall work and like have that be an auto response, basically, is I was like, you had to spell it out for me. Like, how long does it take for someone to make a floor plan? I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours. Okay. Is it basically square footage and like analysis of how many walls and stuff? Yes. I'm like, okay, so it's pretty much like if this, then that. Yes. I'm like, okay. AI can pretty much do anything with reason that has if this, then that logic. So how many proposals do you do a year? How many do you do a year? It's like, I think we do like 300 a year. I'm like, okay. So the average person works 40 hours a week, right? About 48 weeks a year. I'm like, so that's 19,000. I was like, that's 2,000 hours. And if you tell me to do like 200, 300 of those, you just replaced a third of somebody's job. And they're like, what? And it's crazy. People are not at that level yet. They don't like, it's not very well known. I don't think that's like how easy it is to find stuff. So if you had to give like one recommendation for a personal tool that saves you time, I always like asking this question to kind of close things off, and that'll let you plug what you're doing to end the show.
Yeah. No, I think a personal tool is what I like is so, for example, if you use just the normal ChatGPT, like the app, actually what I appreciate a lot is the memory. It actually, remembers because, or at least me, I work on something in my head, and then maybe I use, like, for example, then ChatGPT, I'll use the app, and then next weekend I have some more time to think about the same problem, or I have discovered something new during the week and I want to add that into it, etc. So if I just take a very simple example, during COVID, I was working more or less 24/7 because the supply chain and COVID was not a good combo. But it was actually fun times working, but it meant a lot of work, sitting still a lot. So after 1 year, sitting on a chair, I started running, and then this evolved into trail running. And I think this year I've done like 4 or maybe 4 races in trail running, and I'm starting to get better and better. And ChatGPT is like perfect. I log my results there, and then I say, okay, in 2 months, I have this race, and the trail running is typically like long and it has a lot of elevation. So it's not like if you just run flat, it's easy to compare, but now you have to compare a bit like how technical the terrain is, how long the distance is, and how much elevation I need to climb in the race. Yeah. And it's perfect because it remembers those, and then it can more or less tell me that, okay, if you run this race in 2 months, you will finish around 4.5 hours. Yeah. Um, and then when I've done another race, I can add that. So if I'm improving, then I say, okay, the estimation I did for this race, now we can actually reduce that by 10 or 15 meters. So the memory, I think, for me is very useful.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I honestly, dude, the best thing for me, in my opinion, is I'm recently using. So I like Claude a lot. That's like my favorite model right now. I think Gemini 3.0 is really good too. So it's kind of hard to know. I like Text Cortex. It's a tool that allows you to like make agents and personas and have models that you can switch between. Has like web search and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of like set the infrastructure for. I know it seems like a lot of those tools might not be useful, where you just like it's just like a model hub, but this one does a really good job of having like really good writing agents and stuff. So that's good. And there's another tool that I recommend to all business owners and people who are on the go with meetings. It's called Crisp AI. So that's a KRISP AI. It's the first like meeting note taker I've seen that like really has noise cancellation. So say you're on a train, you're in your car or whatever it is, and you're taking a meeting. It has about a half second or full second delay from when you speak, but it like actually noise cancels the background noise. So
okay, yeah, I may well try it out. We've actually built maybe next time I'll demo that for you, like actually a video editing tool, but more for scientific videos, because the videos are used a lot for training materials. For
okay.
example, like for specialist doctors and so on. So there we actually built a tool that not only that, it transcribes and it also keeps like the balance because like in pharma, as you say, it's very important to be correct regulatory. So if you have several speakers, several doctors speaking about the topic, so if they are speaking for 1 hour, and then of course the specialist doctors, they are always on the run, so they will like have a format that is 5 minutes, and then we can edit down the video, but we keep the same ratio. So if Dr. A and Dr. B spoke 50-50, they also speak 50-50 in that, and then we use agents to do the fully correct translation by, for example, uploading the scientific papers. So you actually know exactly the drug names and so on, because otherwise it could be like blah, 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 on something very crucial, yeah, because those translation models, or transcription models, they are very generic, yeah. So they work for the general, but when it's specialist talks, so could be something.
True. No, that's very interesting. I think I've been looking into the world of AI and how it kind of works from the standpoint of like video editing and where that can lead. Because I don't think that's actually something on the market right now that's well done outside of just repurposing it for like video shorts. I think it's kind of a spot in the market a lot of people would probably benefit from. So.
Yeah. I'll send you a link. You can try it out.
I'd love that. And with that being said, Peter, where can everyone go to find you to check you guys out?
Yeah, so you see this here. We are in the center of Basel in Switzerland. So next to the train station, next to Markthalle, which is like a big food court here. I think you knock on the door. Actually, today we had someone knocking on the door. A couple of weeks ago, actually, we had just a client knocking on the door saying, "Hey, do you work with AI?" But otherwise, our website, Econa, so EKONA.ai, I think is the easiest way to reach out to us. Actually, I didn't tell you the story either about the name, yeah. So I think there are many like companies that are coming and going in the AI world, and I think we wanted to make it a bit more like long term. So and it's also that we are not like venture back, so we are like a fully private company with 2 co-founders. So it's actually the initials of our wives and kids that makes up Econa.
That's nice. Yeah, that's very nice. I wouldn't have guessed that. That's very cool.
No, exactly.
Very sweet. I think it's always good. You got to give them those are the people that make you do what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Get you out of the bed in the morning. You got to grind as a founder. That's awesome, dude. That's very sweet.
Small kids take this job very serious to get you out in the morning.
Yes. Yeah, right. Well, with that being said, everyone, please make sure to go check out what Peter's doing over there at Econa. I think it's that's a really sweet way to end the episode. And with that being said, also leave a like, subscribe, comment, and do everything that you can to help support not only our show, but what they're doing over there at Econa. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.